I really think the secret to my success, honestly, has been consistency and persistence.
Consistency and persistence are two of the most critical things, and anyone can be consistent and persistent. It's just that most people aren't. This isn't a pipe dream. This can be a reality. Denise, welcome to the She Means Business Show. I am so excited to have you here, and I'm so excited to chat with you. I know we've just had a little bit of a chit chat before we hit record, and I was like, I just need to hit record so we can start.
I know. We would have just continued chit-chatting for ages, and we're like, let's save it for the show.
How are you?
I'm so good. It's been a while, hasn't it? I can't even remember when I was on last.
I know.
2-3 years, something like that.
Yeah.
A bit longer.
Oh my God, it might have been. It's crazy. Yeah. I'm really excited. My goal has been to really bring the podcast back. I think I went through a bit of a dip with it, and I just didn't have it in me to keep filming podcast episodes, which is a whole other episode in and of itself. But I do feel excited to kind of get back to having really great conversations with people that are doing amazing things, and just these real conversations. And I'm so excited to talk to you because obviously in the little chit chat we were just having, we just talked about a bunch of things like burning out and business sabbaticals and what is enough and not feeling motivated by our businesses anymore and the identity that we have attached to that. And there's just so much juiciness inside of all of those things that I would love to dig into and talk about. And the other things I actually wrote down that I wanted to talk to you about was also this idea of making your business easier and more chill, as you say. And think that's a really powerful thing. And the other thing was around, I suppose, the money mindset, especially with the economy being the way it is at the moment. And it can create a lot of scarcity and fear and worry for everyone. And it's how do we deal with that? So, oh my gosh, there's so many things that I want to dig into. But I think we should start by just talking a little bit about you and a bit of your backstory, then I think it would be great to talk about the business sabbatical you took and how you were able to take that and the level of success that you have reached that has enabled you to take a business sabbatical, get back into it. I've been loving your Instagram as well, seeing you doing the ballet. It's so inspiring. My version of that is playing the piano, and I never do it. And so every time I see you, I'm like, that's a little nudge. And I'm like, Carrie, just make some time for it. So I cannot wait to chat more about it. But can we, for everyone listening, can we kind of rewind a bit and just talk about your journey with business and where it all started and kind of, how you've got to where you are? I mean, that's a lot. But.
It is a lot. That's okay. So I'm Australian, if people haven't guessed by my accent. And I grew up in a small town like Summer Bay, actually.
I love that.
Very similar to Summer Bay in Home and Away. And I was raised by a single mom, really young single mom. And we didn't have a lot of money at all. But I always was a very entrepreneurial kid and very creative. I loved making things. I started my first business when I was 9. And I just had this I don't even know where it came from really, but this desire to run my own business. And as a kid, people would say to me, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I would say 2 things, and you're going to laugh now because I would say, I want to be either an entrepreneur or a dancer.
Oh.
And it's so fascinating that now I've come full circle and I'm dancing so much again. But I would also then say to people, but I'll probably be a business lady because you probably can't make money from dancing. And isn't it funny that even at that young age, that idea that there's some things you cannot make money out of. And of course, that's what I help people with now is to, really challenge some of those beliefs that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So I started reading personal development books when I was 14 and kind of, watched Oprah every day after school. And so now I really look back and I was like, I was really kind of destined to be someone who helps people, gives advice, in whatever era I would have grown up in. That's what I would have found a way to do in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was really lucky that the internet kind of came around at the same time that I kind of hit 30 when that online marketing, online business sort of stuff happened because I spent all of my 20s kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do
Mhm.
and what my business was going to be. And I tried lots of different things. And then I literally just found all of these women who were running online businesses. The first conference I ever went to was with a lady called Ali Brown. I think
Yeah.
you know her. And I won a scholarship to go to her event, and it was in Vegas. And it was like a really big deal. I had no money. And I remember buying her course, and Mark said, "How much was that course?" And I was like, "I will never tell you. Do not even ask." Because it was like, I think it was like $1,200 or something. And back then it came in like a folder with DVDs.
Oh, wow.
And that was the first person where she was like, this is how you create and run an online business. You can teach something that you know and help people and make money. And I was like, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life. And I didn't know what my topic was going to be. I didn't feel brave enough to kind of be a life coach or a business coach. I was kind of like, I thought I was a bit naff. And I was like, "Oh, like a life coach." That's what I really wanted to do. And so my first business was, I was like, I'm getting married. I'm on a raw food diet to get ready for my wedding. I'm going to teach that. And so I had a business called Raw Brides, and it was just like, it was my practice business,
Mhm.
and I had one person buy that program, and I was so chuffed. I was like, oh my God, someone paid me to help them. And then and it really snowballed from there. I got my life coaching qualification. I started doing business coaching, and that's when I started creating more programs that were aligned to really what I wanted to be since I was a little kid, is just to help people, to inspire them to create, bigger goals for themselves and achieve them. And I've been doing that full time for about 13 years now. I've had 10,000 people through my money boot camp. And yeah, I've made over $30 million now online. And I still feel like I'm kind of a newbie. I know that sounds really strange, but um, yeah, I really love creating and having my own business. And I think it really is for me, um, like really driven by the idea of freedom.
Mhm.
Seeing my mum have no money, seeing my aunties and even my grandmother really stuck in situations because of money. I feel really lucky that I grew up in a time where I could, well, for all of us, right? All of your community too, we're in a time where we have these tools
Yeah.
that we can use that our grandmothers and mothers would have just, oh,
Yeah.
loved to have, to be able to provide for themselves and their families. And so, yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
motivated to do now, is to help other people overcome their money fears, overcome their money blocks, so we can have more freedom and abundance in our lives.
I totally agree with you, though. We are so lucky the time that we live in now and the opportunities that we all have at our fingertips. It's so incredible. And I also love in you sharing that story. I love that you talked about how you had your practice business and that you were trying loads of things, because I see so many people feeling like they have to figure out the perfect idea. And I'm like, there is not a perfect idea. Like, none of us have a perfect idea. And
No.
also, I think it's through those giving ourselves permission to try stuff. That's how we find our way. That's what leads to the right thing at the that we settle on. But I feel like if we're not willing to do the random stuff, like I started in phone unlocking. It was so
Really?
random.
That
Yes.
is random.
I was at
But it was a
university.
need, right?
Yeah.
It was a big deal back then. But
Yeah.
you're right, because even though that business wasn't, a huge success, but I felt great. But you know what? Learning how to do a sales page, learning how to do webinars, learning how to put together handouts, that skill stays with you forever, no matter what your next business is. And nobody can take that
Yeah.
away from you.
So
And
true.
I see people who have like something like that happen with one person, or no people on your first sale, and they quit, and you
Yeah.
cannot do it, because it's easier and easier and easier the more you do it.
Yeah. I also love that you talked about how you had a mentor, Ali Brown, and how learning from her changed everything and helped you to see the way. And I see this time and time again. And I know it's true for me. It's like, I see so many people struggling by themselves that they're not willing to invest in themselves to figure it out, and they're trying to figure it out alone. And I'm like, oh, just get some help, like immerse yourself. There's so much out there that can like help guide you. You don't have to do it alone. And I love that you shared that, because I've had those people in my life and it's been everything.
Everything. And it's not even just because she actually didn't really mentor me personally. I bought her program. I went to a couple of her events. But you know what? The biggest thing, one was the network. I went, oh my God, there are other people out here like me, because I was going to these male, entrepreneur events, being the only woman going, oh my God, this is not my thing. And then I went, oh my God, look at all these people. But she said something that changed my life. She said, I was a millionaire by 35 and I was 29 at the time. And I was like, maybe I could do that. And I set that intention, and I set that goal, and I did it 2 weeks before my 36th birthday.
Wow, I
So I was
love
like,
that.
it still counts. It's still
Yeah.
35. But I think that's the power sometimes of being in community, is that you go, maybe I could do that too. And it really changes your mind. And I remember seeing a friend in one of my business groups make $30,000 from the launch. And I was like, Mark, you have to come and have a look at this. I can't believe it. And then I was like, I know her. She's normal. Like, maybe I could do that too. And, I still use the training, like the training that I bought, that $1,200 that just felt like, I cannot believe I'm spending money on this. That's still how I run my business. That training that she taught me, it was called the Online Success Blueprint. I'm like, they're the fundamentals that I still use all the time. And it's so you can't do it by yourself. Like, you may as well, find someone who's figured it out for you.
totally
But it's
agree
the
with that.
community and the examples. I think that's
Yeah.
priceless. I mean, for me, it's being worth literally millions of dollars.
I agree with that. And I think it's like what you said, it's like the ideas that are sparked, or the inspiration that comes from seeing other people doing it and realizing that we can do it. And it almost like helps open our eyes to these possibilities, and it plants these seeds in our minds, and then they kind of grow and become something. And it's really magical. But there's something you said, it's a word you just used, and it was normal. And I just think that's a really powerful word, because I think sometimes people associate making millions as an abnormal thing, but actually you are like a normal person, and you have 3 kids, and you have a life, and you're just a person who decided to do something, and you're doing it. And I want to actually talk about this for a moment, because I want everyone to realize that you don't have to do anything crazy. It's not like you had to go and spend millions to invent something or do something let's just talk about this. Because I'm guessing you made your millions probably sat at home, working from home on your laptop. And so can we just I think it would be great just to talk about this, of like, what did it actually look like for you making those millions, so that people understand like this isn't a pipe dream, this can be a reality.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is, so today I met with our new private banker. So now, I get all the fancy perks of having money, but we had lunch together, and like, we just turned up. I came straight from ballet, so I was all sweaty. Mark was wearing his shorts, and this guy's like, oh, hi. And he's only lived in our town for a little while, a couple of years. And he was like, you know what's so interesting about Newcastle? You don't know who's rich and who's not. He said, in Sydney, you see people and they're wearing their big fancy watches, and they're driving up in their fancy car. And I was kind of like, what are you saying? Because I was like, yeah, we're driving our Kia Carnival that's dented because I've crashed it into things. And, we just look like normal people because we are normal people. And I would say most of the money I've made in my business has been while my kids, literally breastfeeding, writing my book. Like, my kids at the moment, they're 6, 8, and 11. And so I've had my business for 13 years. Most of that has been with having kids at home. My daughter only started kindy last year. And so now we have everyone at school. But I really think the secret to my success, honestly, has been consistency and persistence.
Yeah.
That's it. I really feel like even if I was to be a Virgo perfectionist about it, nothing we have ever done has been perfect, which shits me to tears sometimes. And also, like, even now, like, none of my funnels are perfect. Like, my branding's not perfect. Nothing has ever been done to my full satisfaction, I don't think, ever. And I'm always dissatisfied. I'm always just like, "Oh, I wish we could just, like, nail our marketing. Oh, I wish I could get my Facebook ads, like, sorted. I wish I had a really nice funnel." But I have exactly what Ali Brown taught me, in 2009. I have sent out a newsletter every single week with some sort of content, whether it's been a blog post or a video or a podcast or something, because that's what she taught me all those years ago. So I show up on social media almost every day and I send something out every week and I tell people about my boot camp.
Yeah.
That's literally it. I wish it was more complicated than that. I'm sure I would have made more money, but I've never been able to have the time or the energy to do things perfectly.
Yeah.
And I
I
think you
totally
don't
agree
have
with that.
to, but I
No.
have shown up, and that's what's made me the money.
But I do agree, consistency and persistence are two of the most critical things. And anyone can be consistent and persistent. It's just that most people aren't. And I think it's trying to find that drive, that why that gets us to that place where we can show up in that way. Which kind of leads me to this other question, but I don't know if I want to go there yet. But because we were
Go on.
talking beforehand about burnout and we were talking about that feeling of like losing motivation in your business. And I know I've experienced that. Like I had all the drive at the beginning and I was working, I mean, I didn't feel like work and I just was so excited about it all and I was working a lot. And then I definitely burnt out without even realizing that I was burning out. And we talked about this a tiny little bit before I hit record. So I know there's a lot of people out there who experience this, especially women. So can you share more on your journey with burnout and losing the motivation?
Oh, for sure. I mean, definitely when I first started my business before I had kids, I was doing a lot of one-to-one coaching. And so my first coaching session of the day was at 4:30 a.m. because I have an international audience and I didn't want to set boundaries with people.
Yeah.
And I would be available. My last one might have been 10 o'clock at night. And no, I wouldn't have had one every hour, but I just, I really had to learn in those early years what would work for me. And I think that's always been my lesson. I'm sure you've had this experience too, where I was like, oh, I have to answer every single question in my community. And then I was, I'd be breastfeeding at night and I'd go, oh, I'll just go and answer a couple of questions at, like 3 a.m, because why not? And when you don't have boundaries like that, you attract people who it's never enough, or they,
Uh-huh.
they take advantage of it sometimes, or they just, you know, they'll go, okay, fine. If that's how she wants to run a business, I'll ask her questions. I'll tag her on Christmas Day. And so that was kind of my next big lesson, is having to make the business work for me. And it took me like, oh God, embarrassingly, I think it took me like 6 or 8 years to even hire someone else in my community. And then it was like, I reckon it was like 10 years before I even took weekends off answering everything in the group. And then we started to do like, oh, are we allowed to shut the group down over Christmas? Those things have been such big lessons for me. But the last big burnout for me, which is probably very common for your community too, was actually during COVID, because at first I thought, oh, business is going to be slow, but actually business was really, really busy. And then what happened is a lot of my commitments got moved because of COVID, like filming commitments or speaking gigs or, my latest book, all of those things. And so then the year that everything kind of opened, all of those things converged in that year. And so I was kind of on fire. Like, I didn't feel like I was burnt out because I was like, I'm just doing it, right? And there was a period where I was creating a new program, and because all those things converged into year 2, right? Normally I would do my program every, re-record it every 2 years, but that all converged in one too. And then I was writing a book, and I was literally like having to get up at 5 a.m. I slept on the couch for a couple of weeks. I was going to bed at like 3 a.m. because I just had to finish all of these things.
Mhm.
And I feel like it even wasn't a physical burnout. It was just like, it's hard to explain. I'm sure you felt this as well, but it was just like, I was like, "Oh, this is a bit unsustainable."
Yeah.
This is probably, and I actually think what was the hardest thing at the start of COVID for me was I was trying to reassure everyone that everything was okay, and I was kind of
Yep.
trying to be that person for my community of being like, "Everything's fine. It's just a bit of turbulence. It's totally fine, guys." And I didn't realize how much of a toll that took on me.
Yeah.
Um, Not even so much the work, but of course the work was unsustainable too. And so I kind of didn't really know how to get out of that. And the other thing that happened for me too is that as I was making more and more money and I was very busy, I really took my eye off the ball of just where I was spending some of that money.
Mhm.
And so then it got to a point where I was like, I think I want to take a break. And it was like, you actually can't. Like, you can't. You've got all these commitments now. And that was a real wake up call too, because I was like, I mean, there is always more money, but it's coming from like me.
Yeah.
And this is a little bit unsustainable. And so that was hard because I realized that I felt financially responsible for a lot of people and a lot of things. And it required me to show up all the time.
Yeah.
Even though I still feel like, we were still making money in a passive way and all these things, but it still really came from my life force energy in a lot of ways. So I've spent the last, I would say 3 years now trying to unwind some of that, which isn't as easy as it sounds, because some of that is unwinding other people's livelihoods,
Yeah.
setting boundaries, and people do not like that. Um, uh, Letting go of assets that weren't making enough money, and disappointing people, saying no to things, not being available for people. Even we decided to and this is really, really hard for Mark and I because we're both ruler money archetypes. And so we can very easily fall into workaholism, and we
Uh-huh.
can enable each other to be workaholics. So we knew it was going to be really hard for us to slow down and stop without a hard reset. So we decided to take a 4-month travel with the family, and it was just before my youngest started school. So we thought, okay, the other kids are in year 1. I think it was year 4. They're not really super important years in Australia. It's not like massive exam years or anything like that. So we decided for them to take off a whole term of school, and go to England. And that gave us a hard stop. Almost like, when you have a baby, I got so much done on my maternity leave because I was like, there's a baby coming.
Yeah.
And being away, so we based ourselves in Cheshire.
Oh my God, you were right here.
I
I had no idea. Where in Cheshire were you? Where in Cheshire were you?
all over. We stayed in different places, sometimes for a week, sometimes for 6 weeks. And what was really hard about it, and this is the tricky thing, it took so much discipline. One, I had to do a lot of work before that to make sure we've still got content, pre-batching everything. But also I had to say no to a lot of things because then people were like, "Oh my God, you're in England. Come and speak at our conference."
Yeah.
Or, "Are you blogging about this?" And I was like, I can't turn this into a work thing.
Yeah, you wanted to just switch off and just...
Yes.
Yeah.
And it totally would defeat the purpose if I blog about this every day.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Talk about the lessons, because I remember I was reading a book and I was like, look at me reading a book in this lovely, and then I was like, I should record a video of me reading a book. And then I was like, no, just read the freaking book.
Yeah.
I think that was the best decision we could have made because we were so, like, we just were away from home, and we were seeing Mark's family a lot, and it was about family.
Yeah.
And that was the most important thing. And it was really hard too. Oh my God, spending 24/7 with family, that was hard. Kids, Mark, oh my God. It was exhausting, but it was just the hard reset that we needed. And I thought we'd go home, and normally our big launch would be in January. And we were just like, oh, this ruins our Christmas every year, and it ruins our summer holiday every year, because our kids have off from like kind of mid-December to February. Like that's our big holiday. But because our launch was in January every year, it was just always on our mind, no matter how much we tried to do before
Yeah.
Christmas. And so we kind of came back from that trip and we went, well, we're not doing our big launch. Like, okay, what happens now? And I thought I'd just go straight back into, all right, and I had zero desire to do anything except the bare minimum, which was to do my boot camp calls, my community. I didn't do any interviews. And I just was like, oh, this is a really powerful thing. It's almost again like when you're on like maternity leave and people go, can you do this? And you go, I'm on maternity leave.
Yeah.
And it feels like, oh, no, I can't do it. So I was like, I'm still on sabbatical. And a few things would creep in, but it was just a really good lesson in, again, how do I want my life to be? And so then I took up ballet again. And now I do like 7 ballet classes a week. And
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I'm doing like cross stitching, I'm painting, just trying to be like more of a human being and not a professional role model business person all the time.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I know you know this because you're a leader too, and it can seep into every part of your life.
Yeah.
And you forget that you're allowed to be a human being sometimes.
I do agree, especially with social media now. I feel like so many of us have this pressure to run our lives through social media. And like if I go away, sometimes people are, like the team might be like, you need to get B-roll, you need to do it. And I'm like, I don't want to get B-roll. I just want to be in the moment. I just want to enjoy it. I just want to be with my kids. And me and Cal and my husband, we went away in January, just the two of us. And he got designated the role of like the B-roll person. And we were doing it. And we were like, what the hell are we doing? Like, you should have seen the crap that we came up with. It was so rubbish. I was like, let's just not even bother anymore. This is just rubbish. And I'm like, what is this world that we live in? This is so random. And on the one hand, I love it. I love that social media gives us all this ability to express our voice and share our message and to make this difference. But then on the other side of it, it can just become so all consuming. And I know like when I'm on it and I get all in, and then I'm commenting and I'm there and I'm responding, because it's like, it's hard to be this halfway house. Like I find it really difficult. I'm either all in or I'm all out. And it's just, I think that's for me where my battle came from. And then when I felt like I just kind of like sat back and was a bit all out, I almost just felt really disconnected from it all. And I was like, what is this all for? What is this about? And then it's like, oh, I do have a life outside of this. What is that life? And what do I actually want? And what is this all about? And, you know, when is enough enough? And I remember someone saying to me a few years ago, well, Carrie, why don't you just live the dream now? And I was like, oh, what a concept, live the dream. And I was just like, how? I don't even know how. And I really had to start asking myself those questions around like, what do I even want? And because, you know, especially when you've made millions, you've written a book, you've done all these things, and you're like, well, what's next? What is it that I want to keep saying and sharing? And then it's like, well, what about just living life? And I love that you took time to like reimagine what you wanted your life to be like, and you put a hard stop in to kind of help propel you into, like, force you into a new way of thinking, a new way of being. It takes courage to do that, I think. And there's been honestly so many times where I've just been like, imagine if I just blew this whole thing up. And I'm like, and I know I don't want to ever do that. But there's sometimes a part of me that is like, the need to rework things and make things feel easier and more fun and more time to do those things. Like, you know, for me, one of the things I was even realizing was like, I just wasn't making even enough time just health and wellness. And I'm like, well, this is silly. Like, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep putting myself in a position where I'll get up and go to work and sit at my desk and just sit there and sit there and sit there. And what am I doing? What am I doing? This is not why I started the business. So yeah, I think it does take courage to reimagine it. Because I remember I think I saw it on social media where you'd said about how you wanted to retire at 45. So was the sabbatical kind of part of that? And now you've taken the sabbatical, like where are you at now? Like with getting back into work, and how are you feeling about it all now? And do you still want to retire?
Yeah, so I am 45 now, and I'm like, okay, am I going to do it again, like 46, like just before my 46th birthday? So that's what I've been working on the last couple of years, is to really have like a really honest look at how I make and spend money. And so that's why, actually, when you were asking about selling my rose farm, that was something that we did a couple of years ago. And it was just this huge, beautiful, creative project. And now I realize that's what I really needed back then, because I spent so much time on my business. And it gets to a point where you still love your business, but it's not. I was like, well, there's only so much I can reinvent here, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to blow things up, and I didn't want to do things, wild and wacky there. And so we bought this farm and poured so much money and so much creativity. And it was just the most incredible project to bring to life. And then it becomes its own business. And it's a really successful Airbnb. There's an event business. There's all these things. And now I can't go there because it's booked out all the time. Right. And so then I'm like, what do I do? Why did I do that for? And so that's part of the simplification. We built this amazing beach house, and when we moved in, like, it was just such a great thing to dream for. It really grew my business, right? Both of those things, the rose farm and building our beach house, it grew the business because we had such a big desire for it. And then when I was in there a couple of years after, I was like, I don't think this is for me, because it was so public. It was a big glass house, like a beautiful, concrete and glass. But I felt very exposed there. And I went, oh my God, I actually don't know if I felt so bad. And the same with the rose farm. I thought, like, people have really used that as an inspiration. And so am I letting people down by changing my dream? And so we were really lucky that we sold the beach house. Like, we sold at the top of the market. We made a ton of profit out of it. It was the highest sale in Newcastle for quite a few years. Someone's broken it now, I think. So it was like 11 point something, I can't even remember, million. And it was like, wow, we made that. Like, we created that. That was a really cool thing to do. So then we've bought, really like kind of boring investment properties from it. But we also had our farm that was like kind of a money pit, but again, just one of those creative dreams. And so now we've moved to the burbs. We've got more space. It's very quiet and private. Our kids are just going to the normal public school. And it's just a lot, just easier on our nervous system, I think.
Yeah.
And I think Mark and I were very much like, we were so motivated and driven to make tons of money, because we were like, well, we grew up with a single parent each, and we didn't have a lot of money. We really wanted to kind of prove ourselves. And we thought that the money was the thing that broke the cycle. And now I was like, that's not the thing. Like, making money itself is not breaking the cycle. Breaking the cycle for us means like having a calm nervous system, which is really hard for me, I think, and actually creating like a stable, almost a little bit boring childhood. Not boring, you know what I mean, but just like they don't need to live in the fanciest house in town. And like our new house is lovely, but like they're not going to be so different from their peers. You know what I mean? That's kind of, I was like, oh no, that's the legacy that we want. And so it was like a real, like, I don't know, a bit of an identity shift, I think, for me too. And especially then when I decided, I was like, well, do I even want to grow the business right now? Because I was like, we kind of hit that 5 million mark. And then I was like, oh, let's go for 10 million. And then I'm like, what for?
Yeah.
Like, why? And when we met with this guy today, our private banker, and he's like, I really want to get to know you guys and your wealth goals. And I was kind of like, well, like we've ticked off a lot of the things that people take their whole life to do, um, building properties and creating these amazing things. And like, I can't even remember. I think we've done like 15 properties or something. And some of them have been old buildings and old banks and the farm and all these amazing things. And I'm like, we've kind of ticked that off. I don't really want to do that anymore. And then I was like, we've kind of done a lot of travel. I said, for the next 10 years, like, we're just kind of raising our kids.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I don't know. And that I think has taken me a while to come to grips with, of going, am I just not ambitious anymore? And I think it is a phase of life, because I think, wow, when my kids are out of home, I think I will have another second wind a little bit and go, ooh, what is next? Or
Yeah.
maybe I won't in business, and that's okay too. And I think what's helped, Carrie, and I think this is full circle of what we talked about, when you just think, I'm the only person who feels this way, and you feel that at the start of your business, and then
Mhm.
you and I are thinking, are we the only people who feel this way now? I have recently met people who are way more successful than me, and I mean like billionaire
Uh-huh.
level. And some of the things that I've had this, conversations with this person, I'm like, oh, you just go through phases, and it's okay to like go through a phase where you're a little bit less ambitious or a little bit less, driven, because I'm like, I remember having coffee with this lady, and I thought, she's going to think I'm such a loser because, she's like, what's going on with your business? And I'm like, actually, I'm having a sabbatical. And she's like, that's such a great idea. Really, really great idea. And I'm like, okay. And then she's telling me about some of her clients who are like at the 100 million mark and some of the challenges that they have. And I'm like, they're the same challenges that I have and that other people have. And I've been really compassionate to people who are, you know, like, newer on the path and going, it's fine, it's normal. But I've been going, it's not normal, Denise. You're a loser. You the point
Yeah.
I mean? And then hearing her, I'm going, oh my God, it's totally normal as well. It's totally fine. So I think that's why, again, you always need to be surrounded by people who are in the conversation, but also people who are a little bit ahead from you, so they can show
Mhm.
you the path and to go, oh my God, why am I thinking that I'm
Yeah.
45 and that's it for me? What?
I just love so many parts of this conversation, the realness of it all, and also the fact that, like, I think sometimes people think when you've built a successful business that that's it and it's amazing, but actually it's this ongoing, never-ending journey of like change and these ups and downs and trying to navigate. And also kind of the difficulty in being true to ourselves, or like understanding what our truth actually is. And I think that, like, you touched on this a bit about how our identity gets so like entwined with our businesses, and then when our businesses need to change or evolve or even potentially simplify, we've got so much of our identity and self-worth tied up in it. It feels really hard to do it, and then we're not true to ourselves, and we keep kind of like telling ourselves the lie and living the lie, and the more we do it, the more it chips away at ourselves and the more lost we feel. And I just think that so much of business, I mean, it is just this massive personal development journey of like trying to constantly get back to the truth of who we are and what we're here to do, and to really listen to that inner voice within. And I found it really difficult, especially for me. Like, after having kids, I lost a lot of my motivation. I was like, I just want to sit with my kids. I just want to go for walks with them. I just want to hang out and be with them. I don't want to have to think about email lists and any of that stuff. Like, it felt so insignificant in comparison. And I, for a long time, just really lost like the sense of meaning in it. And it's hard to show up, especially when you're showing up to help people, when you've yourself lost the sense of meaning in it. And then building the team and like making so many mistakes with that and getting that wrong and really overcomplicating my business and being like, what the hell have I done? Like, I feel trapped. This is not what I wanted. This is not the freedom. This is like just, difficult situation. How big is your team?
Yeah.
And was that part of your simplification as well?
We've always had quite a small team, actually.
That is, I love
So
that.
yeah, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, I think that is my personality too. Even when I was in jobs, I'd always try and find a little side department where I didn't have to work with anyone else. I didn't have to manage anyone. I always wanted to be a little bit of the lone wolf. And also I'm really lucky that Mark's in the business, because even though he drives me crazy in it and it's really hard to work together a lot of the time, I know that I can always rely on him, because
Yeah.
everything that we've done is for our family. And so it's myself and Mark, and then we've got an assistant who's full-time, not completely full-time. I'd say she's probably 4 days. And then we've got a community manager, Mara, who's been with us for a long time, and she's part-time too. I'd say she's probably, I don't know, 3 days a week. I don't even know, how funny. And then we've got a couple of contractors that we use, so people who help us with, customer service. But that might be, like 1 day a week over the thing. And then that's it. And then obviously we've got like a video guy that we use a lot. I love batching things. And so I feel like when you do it like that, sometimes you don't need a lot of employees. Like when I do my podcast, for example, I did 2 days this month, and I did like 20 episodes.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people would bring that in-house and go, well, let's have, whereas I just go there, I batch it, they do it, and then my team will upload it. So, and that's pretty much all our team has ever been. Like if we do a big launch, we might bring in some casual, community managers or something like that. But I think that's really helped, is to keep overheads low from a team point of view. I think where I got myself trapped is that my life got really expensive, I think. Like big mortgages. We retired not only my mum, but Mark's mum. And so that's like one of those things of like, well, I've got to work for them. When my kids weren't at school, we had a full-time nanny, a full-time housekeeper. And also we just didn't have time to do anything in our lives. So, we had a dog walker every day, and we had, like a car detailer come once a week. All of those things were really great, but also it was mostly because we just didn't have time to do anything. But then I think it's kind of what you were touched on before. Then I'm the commodity, right? And so then it becomes like, I was started to feel really resentful. And I remember like Mark's mum said something, or maybe my mum said something about, oh, Denise does nothing. And it was like, who do you guys think has to like mine my personal life and my creativity every day? I felt like I was being pimped out. Yeah. And it was like, hang on. And I think it does switch sometimes. You're like, I'm doing it because I love it. And then it's like, oh no, I have to show up now. And it was almost like, I remember when my grandparents, he was the breadwinner. And so he had like his own like rec room with his trophies and all this kind of stuff. And he expected dinner on the table at 7:30. And, he'd come home and he'd change the channel to what he wanted to watch, which was usually cricket, and I kind of, in that really busy period, I kind of got it. I was like, yeah, I should have the best seat in the house. I'm like, yes, bring me dinner, and I was like, oh, that's kind of not a great place. And I think Mark and I are still unwinding that now, where our real masculine, feminine energy really shifted, not for the better. And I know people do talk about this, like, that becoming the breadwinner in your family, it does definitely change the dynamics in a way that we're still trying to deal with. And there were even points too where the kids would be like, well, mum earns all the money. And I was like, well, dad's in the business too, guys. But it would be like, they would kind of have that attitude too. And it was just like, yeet. Okay, that's weird. So when we made that kind of hard stop, a few other things changed around about the same time. So one, my full-time housekeeper moved away, and she'd been with me for like 6 years. And I was like, I can't be bothered hiring someone right now. When you're just too tired to hire, even though the one you're just like, I can't be bothered doing it. And so I was like, oh, I'm not gonna. Okay, we won't replace it. And then the same thing happened with my nanny. She moved away. And you know what's so funny? Both of them did it because they were inspired to take action in their lives
I
from,
love
yeah, even though
that.
I've never, coached them or anything, they were just like, this is my dream. My nanny is studying now to be a nurse. And both of them were like, we've learned so much from you. And I'm like, don't
Oh.
leave me. But it was, again, that was all part of the reset of going, oh, okay, how do we want to live? And what do we want to spend our money on? And how big a life do we really want? And so I think, again, that was part of that ego thing of going, are people going to still want to follow me if I'm not living in this amazing beach house?
Yeah.
And I have, when I was decided to sell the farm, people were like, but don't sell, I want to come on a retreat there. And I'm like, well, that's part of the problem. I've built this thing that everyone else can enjoy and I can't.
Yeah.
And so I know, I just want to make a point too. It's been hard to talk about some of this stuff. I'm sure you felt that feeling too, because it's like such a privileged, like lucky bitch problem stuff to have, right? I'm sure you've had this feeling too of going, oh, we've made all this money and
Yeah.
it's so hard. Our diamond shoes are too tight. But hopefully people are still hearing and understanding. It's like the whole part of this journey is always going to be watching your sabotages, which mine has always been overworking, even when I didn't have any money. And also my sabotage, which has only been amplified with money, is I am responsible for everybody and
Mhm.
my feelings don't matter. And so that's why when it was like, oh, okay, my mum was living the life because I'm financially supporting her. So she's like traveling around and like she was the lucky bitch, like not
Yeah.
me, you know?
That is the
And so I was like, no, everyone needs to realize that at any time you can renegotiate things. You always have to ask, why am I doing this? And what's important to me? And now, when you were saying you just sit at your office and I'm like, that's what I was doing for so long. And now I'm like, okay, well, I've only got an hour because I've got ballet. And now I'm doing my podcast interviews. I'm doing them on a Thursday morning. I've opened my calendar. I'll do 5 in a row, which will be fascinating. And then I'm going to the movies, and I'm like, I need to find that balance, of going, no. And
Yeah.
it is really hard because as soon as I said I'm available for interviews again, people are, oh, can you do this? Can you do this? And I'm like, oh shit, I need to make sure. And Mark said, he's like, oh, I noticed you've got something in your diary for next Tuesday for someone's, another person that we know. And I was like, yes. And he goes, how did that get to you? Because we would have said no to that. Like the team would have said no. And I was like, I'm sorry. And I was like, but that's what I've got to watch. I've got to watch that I don't get out of balance again.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I love listening to you talk about this though, and I do agree that some people might take it as like, oh, well, you've made so much money and you're so successful and you're complaining. But actually, I feel like it's inspiring listening to you share your story to one, normalize success, and also just like no one's perfect and no one has this perfectly figured out. And there are ups and downs and there's always ups and downs. And we have to we're all muddling our way through, winging it. And like all of us, even the billionaires. But I also feel like, I was going to say something then. I just completely forgot what I was going to say. But
perimenopause.
oh
That is
God.
a game changer too, babe. I actually think that is one of the big resets for me too. I got diagnosed with ADHD and perimenopause in the same year. And I'm like, oh, it explains so much, but also I have way less bandwidth now than I did 5 years ago. And I have to honor that. And I think so many people listening too, like you might be in a period of life where you've got caring responsibilities for kids or parents or both.
Yeah.
You might have health challenges, and we can't do business the same way our whole lives. We do have to honor the phase of life that we're in. And, on that like thing of brain fog,
Yeah.
like I don't know if I'll be able to work the same way as I was before.
Yeah.
With that.
I totally agree with that. I definitely think the brain fog thing, especially me, and also with kids, like, like my kids woke me up so early this morning, and then were like lying on top of me. So like my level, like my amount of sleep is like minimal these days. So I literally, I've been making notes. Like I find when I interview people now, I have to make notes, otherwise I'll have a thought, but then I'll get onto the next thing and forget it. So I just literally wrote down what I was going to say before. But I also think that like in listening to you talk, it's also the amazing thing as well is that the success you have created has given you the ability to make these amazing decisions and to create this life. And so I think that it's so inspiring because one, for everyone to remember that this is no perfect journey, but also that it's a journey worth pursuing, because all of us need to have our own definition of what success looks like. And we figure that out as we go, because I don't think anyone really realizes, because I think you can have this idea of what success is, i.e. the beach house, but then you get to the beach house and you're like, oh, this is not what I actually thought it was going to be. And this isn't right. And then you're like reimagining what success actually means until maybe eventually some point you land on it. But then we're always changing and it's always evolving. And I think having money gives us the freedom to be able to make those choices. And I think, like, going back to what you're saying at the very beginning, that is the most important thing for us, empowering women to be able, or anyone, men as well, to make money and to create that financial freedom so that they can be muddling their own way through life still, but at the same time have the ability to be making those decisions, like the way that you are able to now do those hobbies and have like a day of podcasting and then go to the movies, and to be really defining what you want in your life. Like that is amazing. And I mean, that is ultimate freedom, isn't it? To be able to make that decision. And I think that I love it that, because you mentioned this before about, I'm making 5 million now, like maybe I can make 10 million now, and actually getting to the point of realizing, no, that's not what this is about. It's not about just growing and growing and growing and growing for where. It's actually about stopping to decide, no, what do I want my life to actually look like, and what's it going to take, or what do I need to do that? And maybe it is actually just simplifying everything, and maybe it isn't about crazy growth, and like you said as well, honoring the season of life that you're in. Like how many of us just don't honor the season of life we're in, and we take on, like, a lot of the times these very masculine ways of working and just get ourselves in a real pickle. And so I think that it's so inspiring listening to you. And I also just love also that you shared at the beginning your journey into business, and the fact that we can all do this. I always say this, like with a blooming computer, a laptop, an internet connection, we have the ability to create so much success. And now with AI, like, I mean, this morning it was on Instagram and it was talking about this tool you can use that basically you can AI yourself an app. And I'm like, there has never been a more like incredible time to be able to use your imagination to come up with ideas, and then to be able to create those ideas with more ease than ever before. And while, yes, we are in a changing time, if you can, just use your imagination and just try and go with it and get yourself out there, like, oh my gosh, we can make magic happen. And I love that we can do that alongside, at the same time, trying to remember who we are and what our truth is and what success means for us. And I think having that voice in the back of our mind, and I really hope that people listening to that will always have you in the back of their mind, reminding them to remember, like themselves, reminding them of, to connect with who they really truly are and what success actually means for them, and to make decisions based on that, not make decisions based on something that doesn't actually feel right for them whatsoever, I think is so important.
And when you find yourself in that position to, like, which is what happened to me, 2 years ago, I was like, oh, I'm kind of trapped now. I'm trapped in this success a little bit. And as I said, it hasn't been quick to undo that. It's been a long process. But one of the things was to get really, really practical and to go, how much does our life cost? And how much do we really need to make? And then that means then you can make decisions on that, and to go, okay, well, do we need that? Do we need that? And I think at first when we did decide to sell the beach house, in particular, it was hard for Mark, because it was like, he really built that, like, as in he did all the meetings with the architect. He was there on site every day. And it was a little bit like, well, who am I without, this very outward sign of success? And to redefine that of going, like, that doesn't mean anything about ourselves. It really
Mhm.
doesn't. But it was the getting practical and literally going, okay, how much does our life cost us? And and what do we want? Like, what do we really, really want?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it doesn't happen overnight, I think, but it's just that asking that question. And you know what? Last year too, I know this sounds crap because my accountant does know, but I actually don't know how much money I made last year. I don't. Because I just needed a year where I was like, I just can't face it. Like, and I was like, we're still on top of our accounting. Mark was still, answering questions from our accountant. And I was like, I actually don't want to know. And there's 3 things I'm really proud of last year that are non-business wins. So number 1, I got highly commended at the local show for my cross stitch.
Oh, wow. I love that.
But you know what's so funny? There was only 3 people in there and they didn't give me a third. They gave me a highly commended, which was just the best. I just thought, this is so great. Number 2, my dog won an ice cream eating competition at the local dog park show thing. We just entered randomly and he got a trophy. So technically that's his trophy, but I have this photo of us like holding the trophy in front of the like number 1 sign, which is amazing. Number 3, this was the best one. I got ballerina of the year at my
Wow.
ballet studio.
That's amazing.
So ballerina
Wow.
of the year. Which was so freaking cool to have non-business accomplishments in the real world, and I think again I'm going back to balance, right? Because I probably last year I got too out of balance in a personal
Yeah.
right. And so now I'm bringing it back in to go, no, I still love business. I still love creating in my business. I do have like I feel like I'm coming out of winter and going into that spring optimism
Mhm.
phase again, but with that cautionary tale of going, no, you can have both.
Yeah.
Um,
I love
yeah.
that. Oh, I love that. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's this never-ending journey of trying to find that kind of balance-y place, like kind of trying to figure it all out and just, I don't know, as well, trying to bring ourselves back to a place where it feels fun and it feels good and it feels exciting and it feels inspiring. And for me, business has just had its massive ups and downs. There's been plenty of times where I've been like, oh my gosh, like, and there's that resilience part of, I think, the entrepreneur that just like, I'll figure it out, I'll figure it out, I'll figure it out, which is what we do. We figure things
We
out.
do.
That's why we're
And
still
also,
going after all these
yeah.
years. But
Yes.
alongside that has to come well, what's it all for and what is the dream? And I think as entrepreneurs as well, we're really good dreamers and we're really good at trying to come back and find that place. And that's why we're always adjusting and course correcting. And I think as well, we have a lot of awareness about ourselves, and it might take us a while to like actually realize it, but we will get there and we do realize it. And then we make adjustments. And I also think it also plays a big part in like how like we have created the success we have. And I think all those are little nuggets for everyone, because that's not about, it didn't cost us any money to figure that, stuff out. It's the way we show up and the people we've become through going on this journey, which is not for everyone, because sometimes it is, it's a lot. It can be terrifying. It can be very overwhelming. Like we overwork and we do all this stuff. It's
Because
wild.
most people can leave their jobs at their jobs.
Yeah. And we cannot.
And I think it gets to a point where it becomes a 24/7 gig. And I've really done a lot of work, I think, on energetically separating myself from my business. So I can be like, no, that's my business and this is my real life. And there's like Denise DT, and then there's like me. And I think that's also been another thing that's been great for going to ballet, is because most of the people who I go, it's an adults only studio. Most people wouldn't know me from business. They just know me as Denise, the fellow dancer.
Yeah.
And I love that, because one, I then don't feel responsible for everyone, but also it's just like to really get people to see that humanity. But it's also, that's how I was as a kid. I loved going to dancing all the time. And so to have joy that's not directly related to my job and creativity, but also the stakes are so low. Like, we're performing this weekend at the Newcastle show. Last year, it was a bit of a schmozzle. It rained, like the stage was creaky, and I live for that, and it's like, I don't have to be good.
Yeah.
I don't have to be the best. Actually, I did another accomplishment from last year. I got a distinction in my first ballet exam that I hadn't done for like 30 years, which is really, really great. But I'm like, there's been times I'm going, should I train and like teach ballet? And I'm like, no, I'm allowed to just be like, I'm allowed to be a student. I'm allowed to be a learner, and it's okay for me to do something that's not a money thing. I don't have to be the best. It's really humbling, but also, like it's brought me back to my humanity as well, where I don't have to be so hard on myself.
Yeah.
And also that I'm not for sale. Like, every
Yeah.
part of me is not for sale. I think that's so important. And so I know, again, like for some people it might sound like unrelatable advice, but if I can give anyone any advice for where they're at, I would say the reason why I've been able to do this is because I have built assets as I've gone
Yeah.
outside of my business. So the fact that I did build an asset that I could then sell. Same with the rose farm. And I said to Mark, even at this part of the first part of the year, I was like, let's not do a big launch again, because I don't want us to jump into a launch because we feel like we have to. Focus on selling the rose farm, because that's going to give us a bigger return at the moment than pushing ourselves through a launch that we don't want to do. And I'm like, we're so lucky that we have built that asset that we can sell. And, and apart from that, we have all of these other rental properties, and we have, savings, or we have shares, or we have assets. And what I have seen from some people who are our peers, I'm sure you have seen this as well, is that they build, and spend, which, trust me, I did a lot of that too. But there's nothing.
Yeah.
And so and I was very much thinking, I don't want to be one of those people who makes a lot and then loses it all because there was nothing behind it. And so, anything you can do to like save money, build real world assets, get some good advice. Because I'll meet someone at a conference and they'll say, oh my God, I'm making all this money now and I want to thank you. And I've just gone, make sure you're saving some of it, because like I do have that to fall back on now. And if I decided, or if I got sick, or if there's something that I didn't, decided not to continue in my business for the next couple of years, like, yeah, I'd probably have to sell some of those assets, but I have them to sell, and also I've downgraded some parts of my life that were unsustainably expensive. And so now, we've been able to buy this house in cash, like we renovated it in cash. We don't have a mortgage on this house. And that for me is peace of mind that I really feel like I need in this part of this phase of my life. I don't need the excitement and the adrenaline of bigger rush, like, oh, we have to pull this launch off because we have to buy this big thing. That was really fun and exciting for a time of our life. And now I'm like, oh no, I need some just like, I just want to go and watch TV at night and go to ballet and do my business, but in a contained way.
Yeah. I think that really comes back to like the whole thing of calming the nervous system and like really tuning in and paying attention to our nervous systems, which is like so important. And it's one of the 100%. Biggest things for me has been realizing that and really working on that. And because it can get crazy, but it is so inspiring listening to you. And it's amazing to think of like what's possible, what we can create, and the power that money has in the sense of the freedom that it can create for us, and making sensible decisions along the way. And also, I totally agree. Like, I'm so grateful to my past self for saving money and doing sensible things with it and not being really silly with it, because it's just been, it's been a game changer.
It's freedom and it's stability, and it's that backup plan that our grandmothers didn't have. And that's why so many of them had to stay in bad marriages, which is exactly what happened with my family members. And, to be able to go, oh no, we have the freedom and the choice. And, there was 2 people that I helped leave abusive relationships last year in different ways, either, financial support or emotional support. And I was like, it's still happening so much. And for some people, they cannot leave because of money. And it's just like that has driven me a lot. But then realizing, calming my nervous system, like there's enoughness now.
Yeah.
Like you don't, and I think it took me a while to stop running. Does that make sense too? Of like going, I need to like make more and more and more and more. And I think we see now the sickness in the world from that mentality that so many people have, that it's never enough. It's never enough money. It's never enough power. It's never enough land. It's never enough. And like, I think it is a very masculine kind of energy. And some, that's been in me at some points. And for us to go, oh, no, enoughness isn't about accumulating all the things. Even if, that's what we've been known for, or that's what people want from us. Yeah, it's really important to learn, I think, that enoughness.
I totally agree. Like so much in that. Thank you so much for coming having this conversation. I feel like I could just sit and keep chatting away about all these different things and like all the other things that I was going to talk to you about. But it's been so fascinating, and I love the realness of it. And it's very inspiring, I think, as well, to have that real look inside and to know it's not super flashy. And actually sometimes it's super flashy is not right. It was not the right thing for us. And I think, coming back to what our truth is and what feels like, trusting ourselves with that is so important. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Thank you for being my first interview back from Sabbatical, I think. I think one of my first official interviews back from, and I was literally beforehand going, what am I even going to talk about? I don't have anything to talk about anymore.
It literally also coincided with when I saw your post. I was like, oh yes, this is great divine timing, because I wanted to start doing interviews again. I haven't done interviews on my podcast for ages. Well, I could do like the odd one randomly, but very random ones. But so I was just like, oh, this is perfect. So yes, divine timing.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Carrie. It's so good to see you and connect with you, and to know that you're on a similar path. So thank you for having me. And
thank you. Can you share quickly where people can find you? I'll put it in the show notes as well.
See, I'm out of practice. I'm like, bye. So I'm really easy to find everywhere. My website is denisedt.com, and that's my social handle. So I hang out a lot on Instagram. So my handle there is @DeniseDT. I love when people like share something that they've done, because I'm very practical Virgo and I love being of service. And so, if you're in the comments, for the graphic or whatever that Carrie and I have put up on Instagram, come over there and tell us an aha from it, because I think that feels really good to know that we've made a difference. And there's something there that's going to be a little nugget or a little seed that's going to grow for you. So @DeniseDT.
Amazing. Denise, you're amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation. I hope you have all enjoyed it, and I will see you next time for another episode of the She Means Business Show.